Alright, we're going to be creating the windshield in Autodesk Inventor for the Automobilox T9 car. Okay, I know this is sideways, but it looks like that. So in Inventor, we're going to go ahead and open a new part. And we're going ahead and we're going to start a new sketch on the XY plane. And we're going to create this base shape here, this arc here, and the one line going through the middle of this drawing. And what that's going to be is the one line, and it's going to be 3 arcs that we're going to draw to create that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to minimize my screen here so I have split screen, and I'm going to start creating my part. So from the origin point, I'm going to create a line, and I'm just going to draw a straight line out, and I'm going to go ahead and dimension that line. Now if we look over here on this drawing, we're going to notice that from the outside to the outside here, right, which orthographically lines up right there, I have a length of 3.04. And my line disappeared on me. So 3.04, I'm going to set that to, and then like I said before, we're going to use 3 arcs to create that shape. So I'm going to grab my arc tool. I'm going to make sure that it's in a 3-point arc, and I'm going to click the end point of this line and come all the way up and create an arc. I'm going to create the top arc here, and I'm going to create this arc here, noticing that I'm not snapping to anything except for these endpoints on the 2 arcs, the first and last one that I created. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a tangent constraint in between the arcs, between those 2 and between these 2. And then I'm going to start adding some linear dimensions. I'm going to add the dimensions for the radius of my arcs last. Okay, so the dimensions that I'm going to add, I'm going to add a dimension for the length between these 2 points up top, and that's going to be 2.55. Alright, and that one is listed up here. Okay, right here is that point that it's going to the edge. And I'm also going to dimension from that point the height here from those 2 points, and that should be 1 according to my drawing. And then I'm going to look at this point in my front corner here. The distance between those 2, the height between those 2 should be 0.64. Then I'm going to put some dimensions on my arcs. This arc here in the front is 6 inches, has a radius of 6. This outside one also has a radius of 6. Alright, and that's going to lock everything down. Those are the only dimensions I need in order to be fully constrained. So I'll hit Finish Sketch. I'll back out a little bit and I will extrude it. Noticing if I go back to this side that I have a depth over here in this bottom drawing of 2.55. And then I'm going to use the fillet tool. So I'm going to go up here to fillet. It's not fillet, it is not a fish. So we're going to fillet. We are going to scroll over to this right side drawing and notice that it says round, radius of 0.5. A fillet on an outside edge is called a round. So I'm going to change my radius to 0.5. And I'm going to select this outside edge and this outside edge and click the check mark button. And I have a basic starting of my windshield. The next thing I'll do is shell. So I'm going to flip this around. I'm going to go to shell here. And what this is doing is it's taking away all this inside material and telling me how much do I want left between that inner surface and this outside surface. So I'm shelling it out. So I'm going to go over here and figure that out. If I look in this top drawing, I'm noticing these 2 arrows that are indicating the distance between the 2 surfaces, the inside of the part and the outside of the part, as 0.07. So that's what I'll set my shell to, 0.07. Alright, so I have a basic windshield. Okay, the next part that I have to do according to this drawing is this extrusion that's coming from this underside face. Now, because the top of this windshield is curved, I cannot sketch on that face. So what I have to do is I have to create a work plane. And there are 2 ways we can create this work plane. The first way I'm going to show you is not as efficient, but it works. And the second way I'm going to show you is the way you should be doing it at all times when you are creating what's called an offset plane. All we're doing is the plane already exists on the part. We're just moving it down or moving it up a little bit. So the long way, we can go down here to my plane drop down, say offset from plane. I can click this bottom face. I can say 0.67 inches, which is the distance between the bottom here and the bottom here. That's where I'm putting my plane. And I can hit the check mark button, and then I can go to Start 2D Sketch, and then I can pick my plane, and then I can sketch on it. Okay. Or I can come back to this view. I can do Start 2D Sketch. I can click and drag from that plane. I can set it at 0.67, and it will automatically put me in that sketch where I want to be starting at anyways. Okay, so the second way is how we should be doing this. Like we've said before, there are many different ways to do things in Inventor. Some are more efficient than others. This happens to be the more efficient way. Alright, so I'm going to put down a rectangle to start with, not snapping to any lines that may show up while I'm drawing it. So I have my rectangle. I'm going to notice the dimensioning down here in my part on this side, that all these dimensions are coming out to this outside of the edge of the part. So everything I dimension is coming to this outside edge and is also being dimensioned over here to the bottom edge. So those are the two reference edges that I'll be using. So I'm going to go ahead and dimension the first outside edge of my rectangle to the outside of my part at 0.68. The second outside to the outside of my part at 2.22, and then I will do the top and bottom of my rectangle, and I'll say the bottom to this outside edge is going to be listed at 0.29, and this outside top to the outside edge is going to be 2.26 as listed in the drawing. So I have a basic outside rectangle. I'm going to notice that all four of my corners are rounded. If I look over here at this notation, what this is telling me is all four of the corners that you see have a round radius of 0.15. So what I'll do is I'll go up here to fill it in the sketch tool, okay, because you can do this in sketch mode. And I'm going to set that number to 0.15. And what I'll do is in sketch mode, I'll click the two sides that come together to form the corner that I want to fill it at 0.15. So I click all my edges, I get all my corners rounded, there we go. Now I'll notice I have an inner rectangle. Okay, that's allowing me to create something that I'm trying to extrude here there, right? I don't want to have to shell that out, right? It's not going to work. I actually do have to create that inside rectangle, and what I'll do for that, I'm going to make this bigger so you can see, is use an offset tool. Okay, and what that offset tool does is it takes existing geometry and it makes a bigger or smaller version, offsetting it from what you've just created. So first thing we need to know before we do that is, well, how far offset is it? If I go and look at detail B, what I'm asking is what is the dimension between the inner rectangle and the outer rectangle supposed to be? Well, in this case, it's 0.05. So I'll click that offset tool. I will click once on the outside of my rectangle and move my cursor. I will not click again. I will type in 0.05 for that distance and click enter. And it will automatically create that rectangle for me. Alright. The last thing I'm going to need to do is create the ridges or the ribs that are going along the outside of this extrusion that I'm trying to create. So what I'll do for that, the first thing I'll do is I will create two construction lines. I want to create lines that go through the center of my rectangle here and the center of my rectangle here. So vertically and horizontally centered in that rectangle. So I'm going to click my construction button here, and that's going to let me create dotted lines, so construction lines in this program. I'll click my line tool. I'm going to let the program show me where that center point is. It should show me a dotted line through the middle. I will create my line there, and I will create my line in the same way on this side, letting the program show me where the midpoint is. And I'll hit OK, turn construction mode off, and now I have lines that I can work with. Well, right now these lines are not fixed. I need to know that those lines are not going to move because they are lines that I want to use as reference points. So what I'm going to do is go to the fix constraint, and I'm going to fix both of these lines. So now I know those lines are not going anywhere. Okay, so let's create our ridges. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create two of them, and then I'm going to show you how to mirror to get the other four. So you only are actually drawing two. So the first one we'll draw will be on this left side, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a rectangle that locks to this outside edge. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and create one up here as well. Okay, so those are the two that I'm going to be working with. If I look over here on this detail B again, I'll notice from the inner rectangle that I created to the outside of my rib that I'm trying to create, the dimension is 0.09, so I'll go ahead and put that on both of these. 0.09 and here 0.09. And then I'm going to go ahead and set the width of this, which is also shown to me in detail B as 0.05. Now what I'm going to do is, if I look over in this drawing of the underside of my part, I'm going to see that there's center lines running through all of these ribs that I'm creating. What that's saying is all the dimensions that are extending to those ribs to help you place them are going through the midpoint. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to this point tool and I'm going to put a point at the midpoint of each of those rectangles. And I will use coincident to lock that point to this line. Okay, and I'll use the dimension tool and the dimensions given to me over here. See this center line here going 1.94, and I'll choose that center point and come out here and say 1.94, and I'll place both of those. So now I have my two ridges that I'm going to use, and I'm going to use the mirror tool. So I'm going to make this bigger since I don't really need to dimension anything else. I'm going to go to mirror here, and it's going to ask me to select some things. So the first one I'm going to select is this geometry here, and I'll select a mirror line. I want it to mirror across that line. I'll hit apply. It goes to the other side. I now have a copy. Then I'm going to select this rectangle, mirror line across the middle, hit apply. I have one on the side. And last time I'm going to select both of the ridges on the top, select the center mirror line here and apply, and mirror them across to the other side. Okay, now I have all my ribs. The last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to trim out these excess lines between my rib and my little edge that I'm trying to extrude here. So I'm going to go to trim, and it's going to show up as a dotted line, and all I'm going to do is trim all that stuff out, being careful not to move any of my lines because I do want to keep those. I don't want them to disappear on me. But I am going to get rid of all that excess information so that all I'm doing is extruding this as one big feature. So I'm going to get rid of all that. I'll go ahead and finish my sketch. I'm going to go to extrude, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose in my extents, I'm going to choose to next. I'm going to select my profile, which is everything that I just drew, and I'm going to select this. I'm going to go the other way. There we go. So that it's going up to the next face, and what it's doing is it's recognizing that there is an edge there. That's where it needs to stop, and it will go all the way up despite the fact that it's a curved surface. So I'm going to hit this check mark button, and I will have my windshield completed.